the High Line actually as a transportation system delivered goods to various buildings along the way. But people living in New York City never got up on the High Line. You saw it from the sidewalks below. It was simply a black object that kind of speared between buildings. And it was one of the reasons why everybody wanted to tear it down. Just this ugly structure. When we got up on the High Line, we realized what was incredible about the High Line was not only the plants and the landscape that had taken root there, but the views to the city. You can stand in the middle of a street intersection and look down the avenue, something you could never do when you're down on the street level. If I stand there on the street level, I'm going to be run over by a bus or a truck. So I now, when I'm on the High Line, see the urban landscape, the city, the space of the city, in a way I've never seen it before. I've never really saw it as a ruin. I know Elizabeth Diller, when she walked the High Line, when we first walked the High Line, she saw it as very melancholic, very sad. In a way, for me, it was more an interesting statement about nature and the condition of nature and landscape today. There's a kind of a tension, and maybe it's because I read a lot of science fiction. I think of novels and films where plants have taken over the world. And I think particularly today, when we're really reconsidering what nature is, how we've constructed nature, how we view nature, I thought there was a wonderful tension between these blades of grass, the weeds that have grown there, which, if left unchecked, would have destroyed the structure of the High Line. And there's always that edge that if we do nothing, the jungle will cover everything and civilization will be erased. So I think there's something very interesting for me about the tension between nature and what we have constructed and how we see nature. How would I compare the High Line with Central Park? Central Park for me was an incredible landscape, but it was a park which one went to escape the city. When you're within the park, you feel that the city has been displaced. You couldn't leave the city and go to the countryside, but you could leave the city by entering Central Park and being within the landscape there, and you would forget about the city. It's very much about the experience of the landscape. On the High Line, for me, it's very much about not only the landscape and the green, but it's also about re-envisioning, re-seeing the city. You don't leave the city behind. And so there's a really strong kind of relationship, a melding of both landscape and city, producing, I think, a new kind of space. Let me talk a little bit about the design, because I think the thing for us that was important was, one, to use few materials. There's a beauty about the High Line that we didn't want to kind of smother with kind of architectural details. The second thing was the development of the planking, and the planking which fingers into the landscape, so that the grass and the plants there start to grow back into the hardscape was very important. And then the lighting, it was very important that the lighting is kept low, so that at night, when you're on the High Line, you don't have light in your eyes and you can see Manhattan. You're not blinded by street lights. The city exists just as strongly at night as it does during the day. And so there were certain things I had to do because the park department was involved. We didn't want to use park benches. Again, we wanted to keep it very simple. And we felt if we have the planking could become seats. So it's basically plants, concrete planking, and some wood. There was one beautiful moment where the High Line crosses over from the east side of 10th Avenue to the west side of 10th Avenue, and there was a large square there because of the structure necessary to allow the trains to go across. And we felt it would be beautiful to cut the structure out and make a place that dipped down and allowed you to look into the city from above to look at 10th Avenue. And it's kind of curious because you sit there and the only thing you can see are cars rushing up 10th Avenue. And yet it's a little bit like looking into a fireplace, right? The mind wanders, you think of other things, you relax. You enjoy yourself in that space. And also, I think they use it on occasion for little public performances, which is very nice. But critically, it also, from the sidewalk level, allows you to look back up and see people on the High Line. So there's a very nice, strong connection between the, 30 feet up and the street level. That's very important. I think for me what's really incredible and important about the High Line is not that other cities are now also trying to do a High Line, but it's about the fact that there are artifacts, there are areas in the city which don't need to be torn down, but with incredibly inventive programming can bring a new richness to the city. So it's my hope that that will be the future, not just simply producing more High Lines, but really looking at your city in relation to how, in fact, there are areas that can be invested and can grow in spectacular ways.